Why was this boy hiding on a stranger's boat? And what was he running from? The truth will shock you. The fisherman saw this, and knew time was running out. The sun had just begun to rise over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the vast expanse of the ocean. The waves lapped gently against the wooden hull of Daniel Carter's fishing boat as he steered it toward his usual fishing spot. He had been a fisherman for over 20 years, and each morning felt like a ritual. Leaving the shore before dawn, breathing in the salty air, and listening to the rhythmic sounds of the sea. But this morning was different. As Daniel reached for his tackle box, he heard a faint rustling sound coming from below deck. He froze, his weathered hands gripping the side of the boat. At first, he thought it was the wind or maybe a seagull that had wandered too close. But then he heard it again, a soft, almost hesitant shuffling. Daniel frowned. His boat was small, barely big enough for 2 people, and he had been alone when he set out. Carefully, he stepped toward the hatch leading below deck. He hesitated for a moment, then slowly pushed it open. In the dim light, he saw movement, a small shadow crouched in the corner. His heart pounded as his eyes adjusted. It was a boy no older than 7 or 8, dressed in tattered clothes. His knees were pulled to his chest, and his dark eyes were wide with fear. He had dirt on his face and bruises along his arms. Daniel took a step closer, but the boy flinched, pressing himself tighter against the wooden wall. "Hey there, kid," Daniel said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay. You don't have to be afraid." The boy didn't respond. His breathing was quick and shallow, and his small hands trembled as they clutched something against his chest. Daniel knelt slowly, his fisherman's instincts telling him that this was no ordinary situation. He had seen plenty of lost children before, usually wandering too far down the docks or playing near the shore. But this boy wasn't lost. He was hiding. And then Daniel saw what the boy was holding. A small, blood-stained piece of fabric. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. The blood was fresh. He swallowed hard and kept his voice calm. "Are you hurt, son?" The boy shook his head, but still said nothing. Daniel's mind raced. Where had this boy come from? His boat had been anchored all night. There had been no other vessels nearby when he set out. The only possibility was that the boy had somehow climbed aboard before Daniel had left the dock, possibly running from something or someone. Daniel took a slow breath. He needed to get this kid to safety. "All right, kid. I don't know what's going on, but we're going to figure this out. I promise." He stood and reached for the radio to call the Coast Guard. But as soon as his fingers touched the controls, the boy's hand shot out, grabbing Daniel's wrist with surprising strength. "No," the boy whispered harshly. "Please, no radio." Daniel looked down at him, stunned. "No radio," he repeated. "Why?" The boy didn't answer. Instead, his terrified eyes darted toward the horizon. Daniel followed his gaze, and that's when he saw it. A boat. Not a fishing boat. Not a cargo ship. A sleek, dark vessel, moving fast, cutting through the water in their direction. A shiver ran down Daniel's spine. Someone was looking for this boy. And judging by the speed of that boat, they weren't planning on asking nicely. Daniel's instincts kicked in. He didn't know the full story, but he didn't need to. He had spent his life reading the sea, knowing when a storm was coming before the sky even darkened. And right now, every fiber of his being told him that this was a storm unlike any other. He grabbed the throttle and pushed it forward. His engine roared as his boat surged forward, cutting away from the incoming vessel. The boy yelped as he nearly lost his balance, but Daniel steadied him with one hand. "Hold on, kid," he shouted over the wind. The other boat was fast, too fast. Within seconds, it was gaining on them. Daniel's mind raced. His boat wasn't built for speed, it was built for endurance. He needed another plan. He glanced around. The coastline was too far. There were no other boats nearby. No chance of calling for help. But then he remembered something. There were hidden coves along this stretch of water, places where the cliffs cast deep shadows, making it nearly impossible to see from a distance. If he could reach one of them before the other boat caught up, he spun the wheel, veering sharply toward the nearest cluster of jagged rocks. The boat's hull creaked under the pressure, but it held. The boy clung to the side, his face pale with fear. Almost there, Daniel muttered. The pursuing boat adjusted course, trying to cut them off. Daniel gritted his teeth. Come on, old girl. Just a little faster. The cliffs loomed ahead. The water was shallower here, and if he miscalculated, he could run aground. But he had no choice. The dark boat closed the gap. Daniel could see figures on board now, 2 men, one of them holding something that glinted in the sunlight. A gun. Daniel's pulse pounded. He yanked the wheel hard to the left at the last second, slipping into the shadows of the cliffs. The larger boat hesitated. Daniel killed the engine. The world went silent except for the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks. The other boat slowed, scanning the water. But the cove was deep, hidden from sight unless you knew exactly where to look. Daniel held his breath. The boy was shaking beside him, his small hands clutching the fabric tighter. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, the dark boat turned and sped away. Daniel exhaled, his hands trembling. The boy looked up at him, eyes still wide with fear. Daniel crouched down. Okay, kid, you're safe now, but I need to know, who are they? The boy hesitated, then whispered, Bad men. Daniel nodded. He had figured as much. Where are your parents? Tears welled up in the boy's eyes. He shook his head. Gone. Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't press further. The boy had been through enough. He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. All right. First things first. We're getting you to the police. No arguments. The boy didn't protest this time. He was exhausted, his tiny frame shaking from the cold and fear. Daniel started the engine again, steering carefully out of the cove. He wasn't sure what kind of trouble he had just stepped into, but one thing was clear. This boy had been running for his life, and someone had been willing to kill to get him back. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't know who those men were, but he wasn't about to let them win. The boy had found the right boat to hide on, and Daniel Carter wasn't about to let him down. The fisherman made his choice, but what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. And if you love gripping stories like this, hit that subscribe button now, because the next one, it's even crazier.